Hello everyone! A couple weeks ago I finished my Godzilla review series, and I felt that before the dust settles completely, I would like to take a moment and do a little retrospective. Setting out to watch all the Godzilla movies is something I never thought that I would even want to do, and when I announced that I was going to do a Godzilla review series, I honestly thought there was a chance that I would want to quit partway through, but I didn't, and so I'm still kind of stunned that number one, I completed it, and number two, I enjoyed it. I enjoyed it immensely. I actually went back yesterday and watched my Godzilla review playlist from the beginning. Not the whole thing, just enough of it. Trust me, it was enough. I really don't like to watch my own videos, and besides, the whole thing is like 7 hours long. But it was cool to have a refresher course on the old movies and what I originally thought of them. It has been a while, after all. I started the series on September 1st, 2017. That was a long time ago! I had no idea it had been that long. It feels like I started it just last year. And if I can evaluate myself for a second here, this is like Weaselberry Reviews Weaselberry, I completely forgot how I started. In that first video, I implied that I was going to watch Godzilla movies and other kaiju movies at the same time and review those other movies as part of the series. I did do that, sort of, in the beginning. I talked about Rodan and I talked about Mothra, but somewhere along the way I forgot or I changed my mind because that stopped happening. Probably because I was liking the Godzilla movies so much that I just wanted to keep going and not interrupt the whole flow of it, but I didn't even remember that I had said I was going to do that. I have realized that this review series has resulted in a lot of positive changes. My channel started growing faster, my editing process improved, and the way I was on camera changed. The more fun I was having with the content, especially the crazier the movies got, the more relaxed I became, the more willing to let you see me being kinda silly, and the more comfortable I got just being myself. So I feel like I owe Godzilla a lot. Maybe that sounds ridiculous, but it's true. Making videos has become easier and more enjoyable for me thanks to this series. It's not the only thing, but it's been a big part of it. Another funny thing, which not everybody who's tuned into these reviews has been aware of, is that I wasn't really a fan when I started. So if you go through the playlist from the beginning, you aren't just watching a series of Godzilla reviews, you're witnessing the process of me becoming a Godzilla fan, which is really weird to think about. I liked the original movie, and I had gotten a kick out of the small handful of sequels that I had already seen, but I like a lot of classic giant radioactive monster movies. Godzilla wasn't a particular favorite when I started out. I don't know when the tide changed. Maybe it's easier for you to pinpoint it if you watch the series, but I don't really know when it happened. It just was a gradual thing, and all of a sudden I realized I think I've become a Godzilla fan. It wasn't long at all before I started to realize that the series had more to offer than just guys in rubber suits wrestling each other and crashing into model cities. And I wanted to share that with everyone else. Having an enthusiastic and knowledgeable audience along with me for the ride helped a lot. Well, I was a little intimidated when I found out that lifelong, hardcore Godzilla fans were watching my videos, because I felt like, oh great, they're all gonna know everything that I'm saying wrong, pronouncing wrong, all of the facts that I get mixed up, and you're all gonna point out my mistakes, which did happen a couple times, but it wasn't that bad. But you've all been so supportive and encouraging, and I couldn't have gotten through the series without you. I also couldn't have gotten through it without my mom, who has been my more than willing accomplice. Many's the time she said, hey, when are we gonna watch the next Godzilla movie? And I'd say, well, I just posted my review of the last one a week ago, so I'm gonna give it a couple of weeks. And she'd say, so what? Why do I have to wait? Now, I was asked if I could put together a list of my favorite Godzilla films, or if I could rank them from best to worst, and I tried, I really did, but I don't think I can do it. I am too indecisive. But I will compromise and try to rank the movies of each of the three prominent eras: the Showa era, the Heisei era, and the Millennium era. The Showa era was the first and longest period of Godzilla films, lasting from 1954 to 1975, and going into it, I kind of suspected that the Showa era would end up being my favorite of the three, just because they have that classic monster movie feel to them, and I like classic. Definitely the original, 1954's Gogeta, has to top the list. You wouldn't have the series if it hadn't been for that first one, and even though it has its technical limitations, it's still a superior film. The 60s brought a tonal shift, and watching the films, you can see the tug-of-war develop between director Hishiro Honda and other producers and directors over franchise vision and intended audience. Hishiro Honda preferred a more serious tone and liked to incorporate timely social commentary, and didn't want the movies to be just made for kids. He kind of lost out on that battle, although the series has always kind of seesawed back and forth between for kids and not for kids and somewhere in the middle, but the franchise may not have survived if kids hadn't been enticed into going to see them in the theaters, so it's not necessarily a bad thing that at times it was definitely geared more toward children. Things do get really goofy and weird at times, absolutely, but while you might roll your eyes at some of the most ridiculous and most infamous moments, they are part of what makes the series so endearing. You can't really have one without the other. I suppose you could, but I wouldn't want it that way. I like the dark and the serious moments, as well as the absolutely insane, crazy stuff. And even the worst films have their strengths, a surprisingly touching moment, or the introduction of a favorite new kaiju, or just something delightfully hilarious. My ranking of the Showa era films may not be the same as yours. We might totally disagree about the placement of a couple films. That's okay. I keep changing my mind about where to place some of them, but I am pretty sure about my top 4. Number 1, Gogeta, the first and the best. Number 2, Mothra vs. Godzilla, great characters and human storyline. Number 3, Godzilla vs. Mechagodzilla, amazing setup, fun music. Number 4, Terror of Mechagodzilla, intriguing, thought-provoking sci-fi plot. Number 5, Ghidra the Three-Headed Monster, an ideal blend of serious and fun. Number 6, Godzilla vs. Hedorah, also known as Godzilla vs. the Smog Monster. Probably the wackiest, definitely the trippiest, and some of the most fun I had watching a Godzilla movie. Here's where things get tricky and I'm not as decisive. Number 7, Godzilla vs. the Sea Monster, also known as Abira Horror of the Deep. Fun island adventure, very silly, but a good time. Number 8, Destroy All Monsters. Kaiju smorgasbord, but not as much of a monster mash spectacular as I'd hoped, until the end. Number 9, Godzilla Raids Again, introduction of Anguirus, and I really liked the first half. Number 10, Invasion of Astro Monster, also known as Godzilla vs. Monster Zero. I know this one's popular, but I didn't warm up to it as much as the aforementioned movies. Number 11, Godzilla vs. Gigan, originally higher on my list because it introduces Gigan, but rewatching my review made me realize that the rest of the movie is kind of forgettable. Number 12, Son of Godzilla. No matter how you look at it, Manila is still one really ugly baby. Number 13, King Kong vs. Godzilla. Another popular one that a lot of people love, but I didn't like it as much, although it has some funny, iconic moments, and I bet I'd have liked it better if I'd gotten to see the original version. Number 14, Godzilla vs. Megalon. I keep changing the order here. I'll be thinking, oh, Godzilla vs. Megalon wasn't that bad, and then I remember some of that weird Seatopia stuff, or how bizarre Megalon was, and I think, no, it was pretty absurd. So these last 3 keep swapping positions, but I prefer them all to number 15, Godzilla's Revenge, which just didn't appeal to me at all. Going into the Heisei era, which includes films from 1984 to 1995, I didn't know what I was gonna think. I knew that these movies tended to be darker and heavier, and coming off the predominantly fun and quirky Showa era, I wondered if this would feel totally wrong. But I found that it works, and the darkest films became some of my favorites overall, though that's not to say that the Heisei films don't have their fair share of goofiness. They do. The Heisei films put more effort into continuity, and I appreciated that, especially when it came to recurring character Miki Sagusa, Godzilla's transition from antagonist to protagonist, and the baby Godzilla plotline. I know I poked fun at Godzilla's bulked up thighs and pecs a couple times, but I have realized that actually, when I think of Godzilla, I do often picture him as he was portrayed in the Heisei series, especially his head design. And I know I razzed them about all the gold glitter in the final fight scenes, but let me tell ya, I sure missed it when it didn't show up anymore. Unlike the Showa era list, I'm not too indecisive about how I ranked these films. Number 1, Godzilla vs. Destoroyah, one of the best all around. Number 2, Return of Godzilla, the film that revolutionized Godzilla and restarted the franchise. Number 3, Godzilla and Mothra: The Battle for Earth. No, it's not a popular one, but it had some beautiful scenes. Number 4, Godzilla vs. Biollante. This one had to grow on me, but I have realized how original it is, and I think about it more positively now than I did when I first reviewed it. Number 5, Godzilla vs. Mechagodzilla 2. With so many Mechagodzilla films, this one gets kind of lost in the shuffle, but I did like it. Number 6, Godzilla vs. King Ghidorah. At times it's amusing, and Mecha King Ghidorah at the end is great. Otherwise, this one is pretty weak. And number 7, Godzilla vs. Space Godzilla. There are too many things I don't like about this one. It does have its moments, but it doesn't surpass any of the others for me. The Millennium era, lasting from 1999 to 2004, is the shortest complete period of Godzilla films to date, and the one that I feel the most unsure about. Maybe that's because I feel like I just saw these movies and they haven't had as much time to marinate, but I never warmed up to this era the way I did the other two. Godzilla's appearance kept changing, his character kept changing, nearly every movie was a fresh start, which meant a mental reset every time, or just about every time. They relied more heavily on computer graphics, which often looked laughable and somehow more dated than the suitmation, and the individual stories and characters were harder to keep straight. Maybe my brain just became oversaturated with Godzilla plotlines, I don't know. So my Millennium era ranking is all over the place, and I keep changing my mind about which ones go where, but right now, number 1 is Godzilla against Mechagodzilla. It has some great visuals, and I liked what they did with Mechagodzilla. Number 2, Godzilla vs. Megaguirus. I don't know why, but I just liked this one, even though it had some weird editing. Number 3, Godzilla Final Wars, one of the hammiest, and way too long, but it was awfully entertaining. Number 4, Tokyo SOS, which I didn't think was as good as the first Kiryu film, but I liked their take on Mothra. Number 5, Godzilla, Mothra, and King Ghidorah Giant Monsters All-Out Attack, also known as GMK. It wasn't bad, but so much about it is topsy-turvy, and I just can't justify placing it higher on the list, although at times I think I liked it better than Tokyo SOS. And number 6, Godzilla 2000, I guess, takes last place because it was just so corny and so over the top, although there were parts of it that I liked. Since the legendary MonsterVerse isn't complete yet and the new Reiwa series hasn't really gotten going, I'm gonna hold off on talking about either one here. I do look forward to any new Godzilla movies, whether they come out of Toho or Hollywood. I'm in it for the long haul now, and I'm curious about what directions Japan might go in with future Godzilla films. You could say that everything's been done already, some of it has been done multiple times, but Shin Godzilla, love it or hate it, was completely different, so clearly there's still untapped potential out there. A couple more things before I go. I have been asked who my favorite kaiju are. Number 1 is Godzilla, obviously. He has to be number 1. Mothra and Anguirus tie for second place, especially the Heisei Mothra and the Showa Anguirus. Number 4 is Rodan. He has one of the best standalone movies, and the MonsterVerse version of him is great. Number 5 is Mechagodzilla. I love his intro to the franchise in Godzilla vs. Mechagodzilla, as well as his reintroduction as Kiryu in the Millennium series. Number 6, this is kind of obligatory, but King Ghidorah, or King Ghidorah, especially the MonsterVerse version. And number 7 is Gigan, who might not have the best personality, but he's awfully cool to look at. Something I haven't really mentioned here is what a huge deal the music was in helping me fall in love with this series. I have made a couple videos where I made that abundantly clear, and I can't even believe I made those videos. Yikes. And I always made a point to mention the music in my reviews, so I guess I don't have to go on and on about that here. You are perfectly aware. But I did want to let you know that partway through this review series, I did create an awesome Godzilla music playlist here on YouTube, and I have listened to it myself many times. It's not complete, and it's not in order anymore, which I find a little bit frustrating, but I am going to make it public so that you all can check it out if you want to. I really enjoyed doing this review series, and fortunately, it doesn't seem like they're ever going to stop making Godzilla films, although there might be a couple years that go by with nothing new, but I don't see any reason for this review series to ever officially end. And, as I've said multiple times now, I do have a list of more stuff I'm planning to review. I will talk about some Gamera films, I'll do the Mothra trilogy, certain other Toho kaiju and sci-fi films that I can get my hands on, plus other classic sci-fi and monster movies. I have no shortage of material that I can talk about. So, I hope you enjoyed this and that you'll continue to stick around for whatever comes next. I really cannot say enough how much I appreciate you all for being there, for listening, for contributing your opinions to the discussion so that I don't feel like I'm talking to myself, and for spurring me on. I really couldn't have done it without you guys, and I look forward to whatever the future holds. Thanks for watching!